Catherine West.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm delighted to speak on the adjournment today. And I've been wanting to bring this debate to the Commons to highlight the need for better protections for mature trees in the UK. Organisations such as the Woodland Trust have been doing an excellent job at highlighting this issue for many years, and I'd like to thank them both for the work they do in Parliament for the Wood and Trees All-Party Group, which I'm a member of, and for their help towards this debate. I also want to acknowledge the work of the councillors and council officers in my constituency and across the UK who look after our green spaces, and the local residents who care so passionately about the trees, which are the green lungs of all of our communities. Across London, hundreds of thousands of trees line our streets, breathing life into busy and polluted neighbourhoods. Street trees have always been a vital part of urban communities. Not only do they provide a source of beauty, but we know they also bring major health benefits by cleaning our air, acting as a critical source of carbon capture and as a defence against flooding. Research suggests that increasing access to green spaces could save the NHS more than £2 billion a year by reducing conditions such as heart disease, stroke and depression. Trees and woods also do wonders for our mental well-being, and this was very keenly felt during the coronavirus pandemic. During lockdown, it was a joy to hear birdsong, which would usually be drowned out by the sound of car engines, yet so many veteran trees in cities across the UK are at risk of being felled, and the government is not doing nearly enough to protect them. It's hardly surprising when the government's failed on its own target to meet their tree planting targets. In 2019-20, the government delivered under half of their target of 5,000 hectares of new trees in England. Many members on both sides of the chamber are concerned by the felling of mature trees in our communities, and in my constituency there's a growing problem of street trees being cut down because they're implicated as a cause of building damage and subsidence. Tree roots do not need to be the definitive cause of subsidence, Madam Deputy Speaker. They only need to be implicated for the owner to be liable to an insurance claim. Councils who own the street trees are then responsible for the exorbitant cost of repair work to the damaged property, which can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds per property. For cash-strapped councils like my own, which own hundreds of trees at risk of insurance claims, they face a bill running into the millions and are often left with little choice but to fell the tree. Unfortunately, this is a particular problem in Hornsey and Wood Green, where the clay soil most homes are built on has moved during the severe droughts and flooding we've experienced for the past few summers. With the climate crisis worsening, extreme weather events are set to become a regular feature of British summertime. The law on foreseeability also means that areas like Haringey Borough, where shrinkable London clay is the underlying soil in the whole borough, must have proactive tree maintenance programs for all trees whose roots may cause damage to buildings. Anyone can see that this needs to change. Often the finger of blame is too quickly pointed at a nearby tree rather than investigating other causes and solutions. Mature trees actually help mitigate against the worst impacts of climate change, but they're being cut down in the hope of fixing an immediate subsidence risk. Of course I will.
Can I commend the Honourable Lady for Hornsey and Wood Green coming with this debate? It's such important. The Honourable Lady outlines how important the trees are and the difficulties that some people see. But can I just give an example to encourage the Honourable Lady in Newtownards, in the main town of my constituency? The local schools, Castle Gardens Primary School, I've been involved with a planting scheme where the children themselves educationally plant trees themselves, and that's in an urban area. There's 6 primary schools in the urban town of Newtownards, all involved in tree planting. Gives an indication that you educate them early, you tell them the importance of trees, they appreciate the point of trees, and then you have a society that then looks forward to trying to see how they can keep them.
Could I thank the Honourable Member for Strangford for his intervention and concur with him that in Highgate Primary School and Hornsey School for Girls, where I've been active with the children planting trees, it's a wonderful message for future generations. And these are nuanced and complex issues, and each case needs to be studied on its own merits. But a one-size-fits-all approach to felling a tree is not working, and it's damaging our environment. Already, Haringey has the second highest number of tree-related subsidence claims in Greater London. Since 2018, a hard-pressed London Borough Council like Haringey has faced 245 tree-related subsidence claims and have paid more than £600,000 to insurance companies during this time. Understandably, my constituents are extremely upset by the number of street trees being felled. For local communities who reap the many benefits these trees bring, they have an emotional value far beyond any price an insurance company could put on them. People are quite rightly calling into question whether insurance companies can justify their actions before exploring more sustainable options to removing a tree. To give an example from my own constituency, I've recently received several very worried emails from constituents in Bounds Green who are extremely upset about the proposed removal of a mature oak tree. At 200 years old, this beautiful oak could have another 800 years left. Despite being protected by a tree preservation order since 2010, it is at risk of being felled because of its proximity to a home which is more than 18 metres away from it. A single oak tree can support more than 2,300 species. As pointed out by one of my local constituents, when one mature tree is removed, an entire ecological network is disrupted and destroyed. The Minister will likely point out in her response to me that the Environment Act 2021 introduces a requirement for local authorities to consult the local community before felling street trees. And while this is welcome, councils are still waiting for exact guidance on how to introduce the measure and, importantly, what resources will be made available to ensure the community's wishes are acted upon. The Woodland Trust advises that local authorities will likely need to hire new staff to carry out consultations and will need access to data and systems set up to help manage urban trees and forests. Whilst this guidance is still being drawn up, I know many councils are hoping that the government will take the opportunity to redress the imbalance of power between insurance companies and local authorities when it comes to subsidence claims. The insurance industry must be held responsible for their role in protecting urban trees by requiring them to explore alternative measures to stop subsidence damage before considering removing a mature tree. Madam Deputy Speaker, last summer I submitted a written question and wrote to the Minister urging the government to issue best practice guidance to councils on managing subsidence claims. The response advised that advice for councils to produce their own tree and woodland strategies would be provided. This has now been published, and I was disappointed to see no mention of managing the relationship between street trees and urban development. And as all local authorities will know, this is a major issue which needs proper attention. Earlier this year, I wrote to the Minister for Natural Environment and Land Use, urging the government to provide specific guidance to the insurance industry on expanding sustainable solutions to subsidence. Disappointingly, the Minister's response confirmed that no guidance will be issued, and I would urge the government to look at this again and reconsider their approach. There are steps being taken by a group of local councils which have all signed up to a joint mitigation protocol. The protocol was drawn up after years of input from insurers, loss adjusters, engineers and tree consultants. The aim is to establish best practice for managing subsidence claims, considering the interests of both councils and insurers alike. The central focus is to make sure mature trees are removed as a last resort. This is excellent work, but it's important to note that after 13 years of austerity and a global pandemic, councils simply have not had the resources to invest in woodland and tree management strategies. The impact is being felt by the local community who, like me, are alarmed that access to urban woodland is decreasing despite 80% of our population living in urban areas. Friends of the Earth have reported that 45% of neighbourhoods in England have less than 10% tree canopy cover, while 84% have less than 20% coverage. Areas with high social deprivation are likely to have fewer trees than wealthy areas, and that's why I've called for a debate in Parliament on this issue. It's time that the government properly recognises the critical role trees play in improving our health and mitigating against the worst effects of climate change and nature loss. The central issue here is that our current legislative protections for mature trees do not go far enough in recognising their value in making our communities healthier, happier places to live. So, in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like the government to find a more sustainable solution to preventing and managing the trees so that which does not see our precious street trees impacted any further. And the three key points I'd like the Minister to take away and respond Firstly, guidance for local authorities on the new duty to consult is needed as soon as possible, and the resources matched so that local authorities can actually implement that guidance. Secondly, I'd urge the Minister to ensure that this guidance makes it clear that responsibility is shared between the insurance industry and local authorities to both protect homes and our mature trees. Tree removals must be a last resort after other measures such as underpinning and root barriers have all been explored. And finally, any guidance that's produced should set out standards of evidence required to show that it is actually the tree which is directly causing subsidence, and that all alternative actions to felling the tree have been exhausted. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Minister Trudy Harrison.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. And let me begin by thanking the Honourable Member for Hornsey and Wood Green for raising this issue, and also may I join with her in commending and championing all of those who work to plant, care for and protect trees in our country, and also those people, the 32,000 strong workforce who work in the timber and trees supply chain, because we certainly need them and more if this government is going to achieve the target of 400 million more trees planted by 2050, which is around about 250,000 hectares. And to do that, we need to be planting somewhere between 7,500 and 10,000 hectares every year. She did reference targets, and actually we are on course to meet our targets with 2,700 hectares of trees being planted last year, and the forecast certainly looks much improved from where we've been over the last few decades, and that's as a result of the Environment Act, the Environmental Improvement Plan and the legal targets to maintain that tree canopy cover increased to 16.5%. But what I would say, whilst we're doing quite well in England, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm afraid that Welsh Labour Government has a target of 2,000 hectares per year, but in 2020 they managed just 80 hectares. Yeah. So there is much work to do. And urban trees, as this debate is all about, are certainly an asset to any community. And the Honourable Member set out quite clearly how trees benefit our communities, our physical and mental well-being. They create healthier communities, they cool our communities, and as she said, the thousands of species that are supported with an ancient tree are indeed incredibly special and must be protected. So hopefully I can answer some of those questions that she put forward. We also know that the right tree in the right place can sequester carbon, manage flood risk, improve air quality, provide shade, support biodiversity, and of course they're incredibly beautiful. Trees are at the forefront of the government's plans to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, bending the curve on biodiversity loss and creating more jobs. And that is exactly why we've introduced that target to increase tree cover to 16.5% by 2050. Urban trees are already an important part of our plan to meet this target and will absolutely continue to be so in the future. Through technical guidance on tree planting and protection and tree planting grants we have on offer through the Nature for Climate Fund, more and more trees are being planted in urban areas. Over 850,000 trees have been planted in urban areas. We've also introduced a new duty on local authorities to consult the public before felling street trees. And I know she's keen to know about the timescales for this. I can confirm that we'll be seeking to commence this duty this year. We're currently developing the appropriate guidance for the new duty to consult, and it will be in place by the end of 2023. I would also like to thank the member for Hornsey and Wood Green for writing to us about community consultation guidance and on the guidance for the insurance sector, and to clarify, the forestry sector, the Forestry Commission will be working as per the England Trees Action Plan to speak with engineers, developers and arboriculturalists to get more trees on streets and in developments. And we're going to do that by revising manual for the streets, but also through working with the National Home Building Council Foundation guidance, the London Tree Officers Association risk limitation strategy, and in other ways to ensure, firstly, that the right tree is planted in the right place going forwards, and perhaps the right house is built in the right area going forwards, more to the point. I do understand that the particular tree that she refers to is around about 120 years old, much older than the house that it is potentially causing harm to, which reinforces, I think, the need for a national planning policy that recognises that trees make an incredibly important contribution to the urban environment, helping our communities to mitigate and adapt to climate change. The National Planning Policy Framework states that trees should be incorporated in new developments and that all new streets should be tree-lined. Newly planted trees should be maintained and trees should be retained wherever possible. The National Model Design Code now includes design parameters for the placement of street trees. We do have measures through the tree preservation orders, which are used by local planning authorities to protect individual trees and woodlands that have a high amenity value, including many urban trees. Consideration is given to the visibility of the tree, its rarity and historical and cultural value. Local authorities can also include consideration of a tree's importance to nature conservation or response to climate change. We're also looking at our environmental impact assessment regulations to ensure that they protect against the negative impacts of the removal of trees. We're utilising the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill to progress reforms to the environment impact assessment process, helping to ensure it remains an effective tool for environmental protection. We will be issuing new secondary legislation after the passage of the bill to align with the new Environmental Outcomes Report system. I wanted to also refer, Madam Deputy Speaker, to another huge risk to our trees and our environment, and it feels particularly topical because this week is Plant Health Week, and the biosecurity threats to our trees are significant. So I should emphasise the critical need to protect our urban trees from pests and diseases. These risks are significant and they're growing. One example, ash dieback has now spread to all parts of the UK, and oak processionary moth is threatening the closure of parks and green spaces across London and the South East. But through our grant schemes, we are providing support to help local authorities manage these risks and restore urban treescapes affected by pests and diseases. And I want to reassure members across the House that we do in DEFRA have an incredibly robust regime in place to protect trees. Since leaving the European Union, we've strengthened import controls, introduced a ban on imports of the highest risk trees, and stopped the import of many native species from outside of Europe. Our border inspectors carry out over 80,000 physical checks each year on controlled plant material. And trees which are permitted for import require a phytosanitary certificate and must be pre-notified to allow for official inspection. In January this year, we published the new Plant Biosecurity Strategy for Great Britain, working in partnership with the Scottish and Welsh governments. It sets out our 5-year vision and action plan to secure national biosecurity, protect native species and drive economic growth. Of course I will give way.
I think the Minister always comes to the Chamber, Madam Deputy Speaker, with positivity, and it's always a pleasure to hear the Honourable Lady say these words. But she mentioned Scotland, she mentioned Wales. has the Honourable Lady had an opportunity to have any contact with the Northern Ireland Assembly, because we want to be part of that project, part of that process?
Madam Deputy Speaker, let me take that as an action to ensure that I certainly reach out to my counterpart in Northern Ireland. I'm sure those conversations are happening at official level, but I will endeavour to do that at a ministerial level, and I will respond back to the member for Strandford and thank him for that intervention, because of course being such a close neighbour to England that Northern Ireland is, whilst the matters are devolved, we must work together to ensure the plant biosecurity of the entirety of the UK. So I think I've already set out how we're protecting from pests and diseases. Our ambitions outlined in the England Trees Action Plan are supported by the Nature for Climate Tree Fund programme, and they make it even easier to plant trees. I don't think ever before have we had so much government money going into tree planting and to protect those trees in the existing landscape. We've also been supporting local authorities, who we see as an absolutely vital part of the programme to achieve 16.5% tree canopy cover in England. And last December, we launched the Tree and Woodland Strategy Toolkit, which provides step-by-step guidance to local authorities to develop an effective tree and woodland strategy to realise the multiple benefits, as we've heard this evening, that trees can deliver to their communities. And I, like her, have heard from school children. Madam Deputy Speaker, I think we all visit primary schools on our constituency Fridays, and it never ceases to surprise and delight me the enthusiasm from school children who may be embarking in eco-projects or forest schools, but certainly all value the benefits of trees, perhaps supported by a wonderful recent BBC documentary where Sir David Attenborough reinforced the need to look after nature. The Urban Trees Challenge Fund is one of those funds, which has already planted 155,000 trees to date and is now open for applications all year round. This fund provides 80% of standard costs for the planting and caring of trees in deprived urban and peri-urban areas. Another fund is open to local authorities. That's the Local Authority Treescapes Fund. It's also available all year round to restore tree cover impacted by disease, habitat degradation, or ageing tree stock in urban and peri-urban areas. So far, 77 local authorities have been successful in the 2 rounds of this fund, but I would encourage all members to challenge their local authorities. If they're not one of the 77, please look into the fund on the Forestry Commission website and consider an application. There's the Woodland Creation Accelerator Fund, a £9.8 million fund that's provided much-needed financial support to 2/3 of England's upper-tier local authorities, bringing in specialist skills to ramp up tree planting and woodland creation. We've also got community forests. I think this is a real asset to our country, because England's national network of community forests are planting thousands of hectares of new trees and woodlands in and around our major towns and cities. I was able to see for myself the difference that this is making. They've given urban local authorities tangible expression to their declarations of climate and biodiversity emergencies, bringing trees to people and empowering communities to transform their local landscapes. We've also got Levelling Up Parks Fund. We've contributed towards, contributed towards the £9 million Levelling Up Parks Fund, which will create and improve parks in deprived areas. And I'm sure that she would agree with me that one way to improve a park is by planting more trees. I will give way to that.
I thank the Minister for her very full response. Sometimes the Minister just gives a sentence and it's the end of the debate, so I really appreciate the detail that she's giving. But would she undertake, perhaps an official could write to me on which of those programs she's quoted could actually be eligible for a London borough, because I'm very aware that some of the schemes that she's mentioned will be more relevant for outside London applications, because that would really help And also, could she also just outline whether there's any extra resource for a couple of extra officers for a large borough like Haringey Borough with nearly 300,000. These are very large London boroughs with £1 billion turnover, and it is very hard with the current economic picture to take officers from other areas and put them into this important area of work, but obviously they are very hard-pressed councils at the moment. As she's aware, she also represents a very poor part of the country.
Thank you, and I'm grateful for the intervention, and not least the length of the intervention, because it allowed me to get the clarification from officials in the box, and I'm delighted to say that all of the funds I have listed, and will continue to come to the end, but all of the funds I have listed are eligible, and so please, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I reinforce the Honourable Member to work with her local authority and consider using the local authority toolkit that we provided last December to really maximise from the benefits of tree planting. So really, I think in closing, I want to reinstate my thanks to everybody involved, from nurseries to tree planting, protectors, maintenance, the 32,000 strong workforce, which will be growing. I'm particularly grateful to those who are developing strategies and roadmaps for timber use. I hope we see many more buildings in our communities made out of wood, because I also think the carbon stored is perhaps a little known or often forgotten or not sufficiently considered fact that building with wood, timber construction, is also an incredibly important way that we can reduce our carbon footprint and achieve net zero, whilst building beautiful homes. I think we've all got fine examples of the beauty of timber in construction. Urban trees are an absolutely essential part of the urban infrastructure, and never before has that been more important to me than the day that we hit over 40 degrees in the centre of London, in Westminster, walking along Millbank and appreciating the shade that those beautiful London plane trees provided us. And so again, I want to thank her for giving me the opportunity to wax lyrically about our tremendous policies. This is why we have given tree planting historic importance, both through financial and policy support, as trees are a fundamental part, I would say the best part, of the government's pledge to leave our planet in a better condition than when we inherited it.
Yeah.